Hello, everyone. Welcome to another COVID-19 phone call. This is a global online conversation that I host every day as long as this crisis is going on. This is day 11 in New York. It feels like day 111. I hope you're all doing well. Tell us where you are, where you're watching from right now. You can go and post and tell us, and I'll look at those comments. We are live right now on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and on Twitter. So please find me on those platforms and hit share right now so that your friends can join us. We're going to talk about economic hardship. We're going to talk about the state of workers and other aspects of this current crisis. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and I'm the Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation at Stony Brook School of Journalism. And I make these sessions live every day so that I can connect with the world. We have to keep our physical distance, but we don't have to be socially distant as long as we have this kind of technology. I really appreciate your time and attention, and please do tag your friends, specific friends who you think would benefit from listening to this great conversation. We're also going to give you a chance to ask questions of our experts and also have you share your ideas, things that are working, things that are interesting. We want to know. Let's see, Jody's watching from the Fort Lauderdale area. Thank you, Jody. Jonathan's watching from a rainy East Village. Bimal is watching from Cambridge, Massachusetts. Thank you all for being here. Please share with your friends. Please tag your friends. Look, Jonathan just tagged Noah Webster. And Marcy is watching from New York. Marcy, we're so glad to have you here. Marcy is a good friend. We have been through lots together over the last 25 years or so, and I'm glad we can connect here, and she's doing important work. If you are doing work around the COVID crisis and you want people to know, post it in Twitter or in Facebook so that people can see this and learn from this online community we've created as well. Valeria is watching from New York. Andrea is watching from Lansing, Michigan. We're so happy to have you. If you're not a subscriber to me, to my YouTube channel, it's brand new that I've just started using in any serious way. Please do go in and subscribe. It's SreeNet on YouTube, and you can find me on Twitter. And look at Bimal just tagged someone in his orbit, seeing that the last names are same, maybe it's somebody in his family. You can do that right now. Share. Let's get this out there so that more people can join us. So today we have a very important conversation, and let me bring in my guests so that you can say hi to them. And here we are. Look at what a good-looking group of people who have joined us. I'm here in New York, and that's Alyssa Court. Alyssa, wave. And Rebecca Silverman. Hi. And David Wallace. And I'll introduce each of them to you. We're just so glad that they can be here as we talk about very important issues around what's happening in the world right now. And to participate, again, you just tell us where you're watching from or ask a question, and I'll be able to bring you on right away. As you can see, we have someone in Hyderabad watching. Friends, so that they can join us. We'll go for the hour. So we're here today to talk, and are running a very important and interesting project called the Economic Hardship Reporting Project. That's Alyssa and David are going to help set the story here for us. And Rebecca is someone who has been affected by the current crisis in a way that might be very familiar to some of you, and for others not. In a way that we think about in the last few days, we've been thinking about how tough it is for people to work from home as one of the things that people complain about. Well, we're seeing also that there are people who have no work, have no opportunity to work because of the industry they're in. So I'm going to start by asking Alyssa to say hello and set the stage for us and why we're here today and why it's important. So I'm going to hand this over to Alyssa.
So a lot of the things that we're seeing now after the coronavirus outbreak were already happening, and they were things that EHRP were tracking. An absence of paid leave and sick leave from many, many employees in this country, and a frayed social net, and low low wage increases for anybody who's not basically a CEO or a member of the top 10%. And now we're seeing astronomical unemployment as businesses shut, restaurants, all kinds of businesses around this country, and small businesses especially. And we're also seeing the healthcare system groaning under this because it's so privatized, right? And it was not Medicare for all, and it didn't have any of those values, even Obamacare, that would have kept a lot of Americans safe. And in addition, you're seeing people who would have normally, on the upside, that is, been evicted. So this is the kind of poverty work that we do at EHRP. We represent the stories of lower income people, and a quarter or to a third of our contributors are lower income, meaning that they are not living in a fancy house. They're not David Brooks. They're, welfare, or they've in some ways struggled with the pinch of monetary pinch. So those people are now potentially going to have no work because if any of their ordinary day jobs, businesses start to close. So we're getting a lot of pitches now at Economic Hardship Reporting Project, and a lot of interesting stories, which I can get into later in the hour. One of which was about someone working at a call center where they're considered essential, even though it's just a call center for TV and internet, and they could be working from home. They're putting themselves at great risk writing for us on this, so they're anonymous, but also going to work every day on the subway. And so we wrote about that, or we ran a story about that, which was co-published in Slate. One of the things that was dangerous about this guy's work, who's anonymous, was that he had to work at hot desks, which, many of the listeners and viewers out there might know. Hot desks are the desks that people take turns using. Now, with Corona, that's really dangerous. They didn't have adequate antiseptic or wipes or anything, and people were going from desk to desk. So this is the kind of stuff that we cover, and this is one of the many points of tension. We also may be losing, I saw an estimate, up to 5 million jobs on a regular basis. And you're just seeing, I've gotten texts from friends whose partners have been laid off, a number of texts just in the last few days. And statistically, we're going to see a lot of that. And what's going to happen to these people?
And this is the story you were talking about, right? So
yeah,
people can easily find that if they search. So this Coronavirus Diaries is a series on Slate. And let's step back one more second, Alyssa, and if you can just talk about the project itself, the Economic Reporting, Hardship Reporting Project. How does it work? How can people get involved? And what are you trying to do overall?
So it was started by Barbara Ehrenreich, the legendary Barbara Ehrenreich, who wrote Nickel and Dime, whose vision about poverty is incredibly important right now, partially because she was trained as a biologist. So she's at the intersection of income inequality and biology, which this pandemic is certainly. She founded in 2012 after the last recession in 2008 because she didn't want just the rich to be able to write about poverty. And because she founded it, it kind of was like something from the 1930s, something that FDR might have come up with to put writers to work, and writers and photographers. I took it over in 2014. We give writers, photographers, filmmakers money to do their work. And then we co-publish with like the New York Times, Vice, Slate. We've had a film on Showtime, et cetera, et cetera. The idea is to try to change media and also save writers at the same time.
That's great. And thank you for doing that. It's my honor to work with you on this project as you try to help so many people. Here's a comment from Stephen Kaplan. He says, for many, the well has dried up overnight, and these are going to be incredibly tough times. Stephen Greenhouse hit so much on this, including how gig workers will be affected big time. This was the New York Times read-along that I did yesterday with Stephen Greenhouse, whose book about workers is so important and timely at this moment. So thank you, Stephen. Anybody who's watching right now, you can join us and you can share your comments and talk to us. We want to hear you, and please share this with your friends and family. We'll also put this out on the Economic Hardship Reporting Project Twitter feed at Econ Hardship. Please follow them. They do incredible work. all the journalists that they're supporting. So go to Econ Hardship, and you will be able to follow their work and also get a chance to hear all the things that they are doing. And you just heard from Liz Court. That is her Twitter handle. You see on the screen, LIS2ART. And now I'm going to just have David say a few words. David is also at the Economic Project, and he's at David R. Wallace on Twitter. Hi, David.
Hey, how are you? Glad to.
First of all, where are you? Where are you? And your family okay?
Yeah, my family's okay, and we're in Bearsville, New York. We hightailed it upstate. Lucky that we had a place to go, and we feel very privileged that we do. So we're in a house and enjoying making lemonade out of lemons. Put it that way.
Yeah, I hear you. Tell us about the project, and how do you feel working on these issues right now? It seems so much more timely, even though it was always timely. People are paying more attention, it seems.
Well, I must say that it has never been more important to have an organization like we have to try and, as I say, put a Band-Aid on a gushing wound. It's not perfect, to say the least, but we give grants relatively quickly to journalists to continue their work, especially when they've been laid off and have, in many cases, not gotten severance. We're getting folks writing us saying, I've just been laid off. They laid off the whole company, and there's no severance. And which is, there's a Yiddish word for it. It's called shanda. It means profound shame. And there's a lot of profound shame going on right now, and we try and do things like we worked with The Guardian to do mini portraits with Camille Sweeney as the reporter. Gave her a grant to do mini portraits of folks who have been laid off suddenly. And that's, I think our next guest can talk a lot about.
Yeah, so thank you, David. And this is the story you were referring to, and we're going to try something unusual here. We're going to try and bring on Camille Sweeney, who couldn't get in on the other system. So we're making do here. So we're going to try this way. That's Camille.
Brilliant.
And Camille, can you say hi? Yeah, can you? And let us know if you can. Everybody can hear her. Please speak up as loud as you can.
Sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, you're loud. Yeah, it's good. Thank you.
Okay.
So Camille is coming in on FaceTime as we try to do this, given the situation. So I'm just going to show you your story on screen, Camille, and if you can just talk a little bit about the story and why it's important and what you cover. And then one of your subjects is going to talk with us as well.
Okay, great. Yeah. Well, I got a call from David and Jessica Reed, who is the features editor of the U.S. version of The Guardian. Last week, it was Monday, we had just heard Sunday that the restaurants were being closed for in-service, and all the bars were being shut down except for some takeout possibilities, and the gyms were shut. And of course, this was all in the New York metro area. And so one of the things that I have been covering is, as an author, I've been covering workers and how people actually find work that suits them and supports them. And so I quickly pivoted to covering these issues of how the pandemic was affecting workers. And I zoomed through my network and started calling associations and finding people who were being affected so that, in a sense, they were sort of representative of what was happening on a more major scale. So I interviewed the mixologist that you'll meet in a few minutes. I interviewed a couple whose livelihood is restaurant work. She is a server and he is a line cook in 2 different restaurants, and they just lost all their income overnight. I interviewed a personal trainer who works with Equinox, who actually stepped in quite well and really tried to help the personal trainers maintain their clients through tech and a lot of quick tech training. And at least for now, he feels secure that some of his pay, he will be getting some of his pay. I also interviewed a lovely figure skating coach who does an after-school program, and he absolutely was devastated because, of course, he's training kids to be elite figure skaters, and it's just not the same to do it virtually. And he was at a real quandary as to what was coming next for him. And then there was a young woman who works on a cable production, a big series that was shut down, and is just going straight to unemployment within 2 weeks, and sort of worried that her next step, if this, however long this lasts, might be moving back in with her parents.
And tell me about the reaction you've had to the story.
So a lot of people have been reaching out to me with their own stories, and actually it's been really amazing to hear people coming together, both on the professional side, the workers who are looking for relief and outlets, and even just sharing their story. I'm working on collecting a hub of these stories at my new Instagram. It's called Find Your Road, and I'm featuring a lot of these people there just to get their stories out and try and connect people also to some of the companies who are putting up funds to try and alleviate some of this. And then, of course, just making their stories known to people who can possibly help.
And thank you for doing that. So important. How hard was it to get people to share their stories?
Not very hard. I think everybody's in this state of wanting to talk about it and wanting to connect. Social distancing has a real effect, obviously, can lead to a lot of social isolation, but also just crowdsourcing. This is the power of what we can do when we tell these stories, is get them connected together.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you can. Let me just tell people what's going on. If you've just tuned in, you're watching my daily COVID-19 global conference call, where we bring in people from around the world to talk about this current crisis. It's day 11 in New York, but it feels a lot longer than that. And of course, in other parts of the world, it is a lot longer than that. And you have on screen with me via FaceTime, Camille Sweeney. Please follow her on Twitter. You see everyone's Twitter handle on the screen. So Camille Sweeney, please follow her. You also have Alyssa Wave. Alyssa is with the Economic Hardship Reporting Project, as is David Wallace, David Wave. And they're both on Twitter at ListQuart and at David R. Wallace. And the Economic Hardship Reporting Project is a project, a new way for journalists to cover the important stories. And we also have Rebecca Silverman here. Rebecca is on Instagram, and let me give you her Instagram so you can follow her. She is on Instagram as Rebecca SIL. Please follow her. Before we get to Rebecca, I just want to pull up one of the comments here from Marcy, who says, what grants are available now for reporting for EHRP? What can we share? And yes,
I can answer. We have a $20,000 fund, up to $20,000 fund that we've set aside for reporting on coronavirus, and specifically it's targeted for folks who are either financially impacted, reporters who are financially impacted by coronavirus, or we also have emergency grants. If a journalist is stricken with coronavirus, we'll try and figure out a way to get them some money too. So we have dual grants, and we already have given out a grant, one grant to a reporter who is stranded in Kenya and who can't get back home. And so she's reporting for the Washington Post. She's going to be writing a column about what it's like to be stranded, an American stranded, and how she's left feeling as if she's abandoned by her government, and because she's reached out to her government and had no luck. And so she'll be writing that for the Washington Post, and we're going to help support that.
Thank you. And I work with a lot of clients. I'm proud to do all the projects I do, but this particular project, working with Liz and David and the whole team at Economic Hardship Reporting Project is so meaningful, and thank you for doing that. And so, just to be clear, you are prioritizing people who are journalists to do these stories if they themselves are having financial trouble, so that you're making sure that people who have financial difficulty, this can be a source of income while covering the issues at hand. Is that correct?
But also, I should say, if you do have a project and you're not, you're like Camille or somebody who's just a freelancer who needs extra support and has a coronavirus oriented story that's really good or moving or immersive, please also pitch to us. Potentially some of this fund can go to that, but more broadly, a lot of our funding is going to go to coronavirus, and we're interested in inequality and poverty.
And this is the point that both Nick Kristof and Cheryl Wu Dunn, who also have a book about American poverty, and Stephen Greenhouse all made the same point you're making, that things were already bad in America, and this is just making it worse. All the rhetoric we hear from the White House about before February 4th, before March 1st, about the economy's doing great. It wasn't always doing great for everybody, and now it's certainly
it wasn't doing great for most people. Let's be honest about this. For the top 1 or 2%, it's been gangbusters. But for the many people can't afford a $400. There's been a study, right? You can't afford $400 in an emergency. Well, here's the emergency, and they can't afford it.
Right. But also, there's a lot of people. I just wrote about this in my last book, Squeeze. There's a lot of debt, and I think one of the interesting things that you're seeing, you're having debt deferrals for medical expenses and for school expenses, and I think that I wonder what's going to happen with that. If we're going to start rethinking debt, if we're going to start rethinking universal basic income and getting grants every month for, especially for Americans who earn less than $75,000.
Yeah, and to think that $75,000 is the cutoff tells you something, right? Like that's and the poverty levels is so different in particular parts of America. I just want to bring in Rebecca to say hello. I want to also tell everyone that Rose Horowitz, who is graciously tweeting for us at Rose Horowitz 31 during the show, you can easily just follow her, Rose Horowitz 31. She's an amazing journalist and does a great Twitter feed every day. But today she's tweeting us. I'm using the hashtag Sree Covid19 call, Sree Covid19 call. I hope you will all follow me at Sree and follow Rose. She also does women to follow. And here are some women to follow. Camille Sweeney and Alyssa Court are people you can follow. And certainly follow Rebecca Silverman on Instagram. And I'm going to have Camille kind of say hello to Rebecca. I don't know when is the last time they've spoken since the story went live. But over to you, Camille. Say hi to Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine, thanks. I was connected to Rebecca pretty early on, and I was really interested in her experience. She has some really sane way of looking at this issue, and she's already collecting a lot of information on what relief is available for her industry. And
the industry is mixology, which is not a term that is famous all over the world, so we should say it's another word for bartending, bartender. And Rebecca, tell us your story, and we're so sorry that we're meeting under these circumstances, but thank you for coming on here.
Of course, my pleasure. So I work in a cocktail bar in Brooklyn, and like every other bar and restaurant in New York City, the last week we were open, we were facing seriously depleted numbers. My business, my income in our last week open went down well over probably 70% in that last week. For instance, on our last Wednesday open, it's usually a very good night for me. I'm usually pretty full. I had 10 customers. So that's my last paycheck. Then we made the choice on Sunday to close. It was the socially responsible thing for us to do. A bar over the course of a week can serve thousands of people. So for us to be kind of the middle person to go between so many people, it wasn't the right thing to keep doing. In addition to our numbers falling, it worked out that was the day that the governor said that all bars and restaurants in New York State had to close. So it was something that we were okay with because we knew it needed to happen. Financially, I am now claiming unemployment. I have no work. It took the better part of last week to be able to file. I think the sheer volume of people that suddenly found themselves unemployed crashed the unemployment website, which was frustrating, but also I have a lot of sympathy for the people that are working at the unemployment office right now, because I'm sure they're having to field an unprecedented amount of people. I have been collecting. I have a list in front of me. I've been collecting resources. The industry has been absolutely incredible. Liquor brands are really stepping forward and donating in huge volumes. In the article I mentioned, Jameson at the time had donated $500,000 to the United States Bartenders Guild. They have a bartender relief fund. A lot of us generally don't have health insurance or benefits, retirements, 401ks, etc. There's no safety net for us. We can earn a good wage, but we just don't have things to fall back on. There's just no safety net. So for people have like health problems, the bartender relief fund has already been there. But now, since that article, so many brands have come through. Patron gave $1 million. Diageo, which is a parent company that owns a lot of different spirits, has given $1 million. I believe Guinness gave $1 million. The parent company that owns Miller gave $1 million. So many brands have really been stepping up and taking care of us. We take care of them throughout the year, and it's really nice having this love and support come through. So the USBG, United States Bartenders Guild Bartender Relief Fund, is offering bartender grants. I applied for it last week. I believe it's capping at $2,500 per person, but it's incredible because basically every single bartender in the country is now unemployed or about to be.
Rebecca, that's just to underline that basically every bartender is unemployed, and that's where we're going to see that spike in unemployment numbers. Bartenders and restaurant servers, all those folks are going to be suffering. Do you think there's anything particular about the bartending business and the way bartenders are that they have, any special resilience, perhaps because they see a lot of human life and therefore have a different attitude to all of this, or is this going to affect them just like everybody else?
I mean, I think bartenders are by nature pretty flexible people. The amount of situations and personalities you encounter within an evening is certainly variable. So I think, and a lot of us come from varied backgrounds. I was a professional performer in New York up until very recently. So I have a lot of history surviving on very little. So I think I know I'm going to be okay because I've done it before. I was a dancer and I knew how to survive in New York on not a lot of income. Hopefully my unemployment comes through this week. Hopefully the grants start coming through so we have something coming in. That said, I'm certainly going to struggle to meet my rent, my bills in a way that I never have before. Of course, as my income has grown, I've taken on debt in different ways, and I don't know that I can meet my minimum payments in a lot of places. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think the governor's really stepping up right now and doing a very good job, and things like no evictions for 90 days for New York, not having your utilities shut off. Hopefully I don't get to the point where that's necessary, but I really feel safe knowing that I have some kind of a safety net, at least for the next 3 months, to catch me if I do. The support from within the industry is really good. The liquor brands, like I said, there's also, I'm a bartender, but in addition to bartenders, there are porters, which very often are immigrants, and in a lot of bars and restaurants, not necessarily on the books. My bar, they are. So where do those people go? How do they get support? There's certain organizations, Restaurant Workers Community Foundation, the COVID Emergency Relief Fund, is offering grants for everybody in the restaurant industry, I believe. So that's servers, porters, bar backs, dishwashers, like the amount of people that are affected by this. One Fair Wage has launched an emergency fund. A lot of these funds are maybe capping at $500, but I think any bit right now for people that are really struggling. Another Rally is offering $500 relief grants. CORE is offering assistance to service industry workers who've tested positive for COVID and have a child living at home. So the list goes on. There's a lot of scrambling to create ways of helping the community right now.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you for that. And I know Alyssa has a couple of questions for you, but I just want to remind everybody what we're doing at the moment. If you've just stumbled onto this, my name is Sree Sreenivasan, and I'm a digital media consultant and Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation at the Stony Brook School of Journalism. And I do these global conference calls every day at a different time to bring together our people around this conversation. This is my 11th call. This one is around poverty and workers and what's happening in America today. But we've had calls on everything from live talking to people who are in these hot zones to talking about tech help and also to multiple doctors. And yesterday we had a positive psychologist on. And I want to say, Rebecca, you seem, at least to us, positive, and you're trying to channel your energy by trying to put together resources for your colleagues, which I think is wonderful. I'd love to hear how you are sharing that. And maybe you're putting it on your Instagram or something. She's on Instagram at Rebecca Leigh SIL. Please do check her out. And then let me bring everybody else who is with us on the call. We also have Alyssa, and David Wallace, David R. Wallace, and she's Liz Court at Liz Court. And they are both with the Economic Hardship Reporting Project, which funded the story in The Guardian that got us introduced to Rebecca's story. And we also have, via FaceTime, we have Camille Sweeney joining us. And she is an example of someone who's being resourceful at this moment. We couldn't make the technology work, but there she is. And she's listening as well. Everyone, please share this on your Twitter, on your Facebook, on your LinkedIn. I'm live on all those platforms. And if you're not a subscriber of my content on any of those, especially on YouTube, because every time I'm live, you'll get a notice. Please do join me there. I'm trying to learn YouTube in this important moment. Please tag your friends. Please share. This is such a good and important conversation, and we're really grateful. So, Alyssa, you had a question for...
Yeah, I have now like a bunch of questions for you, Rebecca. Well, the first one is something fun, which I was just suddenly thinking, this is an example of EHRP in action. Perhaps we should assign you for drinks that people can make with cheap ingredients.
Yeah.
When they're stuck at home, quarantined. I don't know David and I should talk about that, but that was just an idea.
There was a meme that was circulating among a lot of bartenders that I know that was a joke, but also truth in it, and I'd be happy to do it. It was, I think it's something like Venmo me $6 and I'll teach you how to make a cocktail at home and watch you drink it over Skype.
Yeah, well, it's probably better than certain kinds of life coaching, frankly, better than therapy. But I was just thinking, we should definitely continue this is the kind of thing we can do. You can tell us a little about your economic situation, and then maybe we could come up with drinks if you have a lemon, some sugar, and an old bottle of vermouth. But anyway, so that's one thing. The other thing is
here's what Doug Levy, who's watching from San Francisco, he says quarantinis.
Brilliant,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Quarantini, let's do the quarantini.
And by the way, I also want to ask Doug to post in the group the excellent book he has just published, an ebook, How to Communicate During Coronavirus. If you're a government, you're a nonprofit, you're a large institution, how you should be communicating. So lots of great tips there. And I want him to post it in his book, the book information. And he's at SFDUG, at SFDUG. He is fantastic in crises. So do connect with him.
He obviously has a great sense of wit and talk about resilience. But when you're talking about your rent, I'm just still wishing that we had some rent forgiveness here. You know, I know that there's mortgage payment forgiveness, et cetera, but that we could have rent deferrals in the city. I think that would go a long way, and I'd like to just push for that.
I've been seeing petitions circulating online for that. Yeah.
But that would help you a lot, right?
It seems like things might be moving in that direction. I think the mayor and the governor have been daily announcing steps that they're taking, but that would be an incredible help. I mean, just that little leeway for the couple of months before we're up and running again. In the article, I said that for at least my bar, our busy season is January, February, March. It's when I make most of my income for the year. It's when I put my money aside so that when business gets really slow for us in June and July, I have money to draw on. So even if we're back up and running by June, I don't know what that's going to mean for me, because I won't have this money set aside to draw on for my slowest time of year. So the long-term effects also are going to be interesting.
We have a question from David Wallace. He wants to jump in here.
I'm wondering, Rebecca, how your view of the role of government has changed now that you're affected by this crisis.
I've been a very politically active liberal person for my entire life, so my expectations of the current administration and the White House have been met. In that they aren't going to accomplish anything. The governor, I think,
Governor Cuomo, you're saying?
Governor Cuomo, yes. I don't necessarily always love everything that he's done. I think he's doing an incredible job right now. Socially, I believe that the government should be there to take care of its citizens, and nationally it isn't. Statewide, it's trying. So I don't know that my opinion has changed in this. I'm certainly a realist. Politically, I think Elizabeth Warren was the candidate that I really wanted to come see through, and I think if we had a government that she's envisioning, then a lot of protections would be in place, and we would be having a different conversation right now.
And this brings me to be like, I love that all these Jamesons and Guinness is doing this stuff, but it does sort of put a kind of angry fire in me that we are so dependent on the private sector that you are for this,
Yeah, absolutely.
That we have to be thankful for every, carafe of care that they give us, Yeah.
And while it's lovely that these organizations are doing it, why is that their responsibility?
Yes. And there'll be a limit. There'll be a limit to what they're willing to do or can do, probably some of them. So then we have to start thinking about workers like you and other kinds of food service workers as frontline, as having been at the front lines or still being at the front line. I mean, this was another piece that we had at EHRP this month from coronavirus, which was about gig workers who deliver food or work in grocery stores, get caviar at Uber Eats. I think they should be classified as first responders, the people who are still out there.
Yeah.
Folks, I want to do two things, just to be conscious of time. We have about 15 minutes left, and we're having such a great conversation. Thank you all for participating. Please tag your friends. They can watch the recording of this if they don't get to see it live. Please hit share right now, and please do follow all of these folks. And by the way, Camille Sweeney, who's joining us on FaceTime, I had her handle incorrectly on my screen. It's _ Camille Sweeney. Thank you, Camille, for pointing that out. So always on brand and paying attention. please follow the others. And Camille, I have a quick question for you. In terms of working with EHRP, how did you decide that this was the right sequence of doing things, taking, a big organization like The Guardian, obviously, they have a lot of interest in the US, right? The Guardian has done a really good job of covering the United States and covering issues like this. And so that was very interesting to hear.
I think that what David and Alyssa are doing is incredible, because it's really connecting journalists that they have had experience with to some of these organizations. And Jessica is at The Guardian, Jessica Reed, and she has been doing a tremendous job of trying to give the breadth of what is happening in the midst of all of this. And I think she is just doing a great job at it. I am always happy to write for outlets whose political views I share, but I also think it's important to be looking at all the different perspectives here, so that we can be, spreading the word as best we can. And I'm with Rebecca that I feel positive that we can actually affect change more on the grassroots level, with speaking out through social media, all of these outlets that are available to us. And I think that's important too.
Yeah, thank you. That's really important. I'll just say that, we want to be constructive in our conversations. And a gentleman named Robert went into my Facebook and just said Trump 2020 and walked away. That constructive in any way to think about, this is not about politics. We want to talk about how we can help Americans come through this. And so, in effect, trolling by just going there and shouting and just running away is not constructive and not helpful to anybody. Alicia Marie says she's tuning in from Grand Rapids, Michigan right now, where I'm in shelter-in-place order as of 11 a.m. So that's new. And one of the things that I'm going to ask David or Alyssa, if you've ever thought that part of the reason that President Trump is not as engaged is that this is affecting cities and therefore not as much his base. He doesn't think that his people are being affected, and so he wants to talk about already cutting back the shelter-in-place and other orders. Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, I think it is. There's a lot of blue state hatred here. I mean, if you look at the California, New York, and Washington are now the hotspots, it's because they have large cities that are cosmopolitan, that aren't insular, that are have immigrant populations, where there's a lot of intensity of exchange, and there's less kind of hermetically sealed communities. Like there's less suburbanization. There's less alienation in some ways, and we're paying the price now for that. And I think he actually, we're not his base, but he also on some level resents and hates that kind of cosmopolitanism, and then we're seeing the side effect of it. And it's this complete leadership void. I mean, some of it is just that there has always been a lack of federal support in America for many decades now, since starting with the Reagan era, and this has only gotten worse and worse right now. And we have somebody who's actually actively disassociating himself from his own citizens
and his own city. By the way, he's a New Yorker.
Yeah, but
the mayor and the governor have to go on TV and sort of ask for him to pay attention. It's kind of shocking. I just want to go to my viewers on LinkedIn so we can say hello. Theta is watching from Jersey City. Philip says Jersey City represents cordoned and socially distanced, brought to you by FiOS. Pradnya is watching us on multiple channels. And Jana says, hi from Boston. All my work events have been canceled through the end of April, but luckily have savings, Jana. We wish you the very best. People are watching in from Seattle and from Cumming, Georgia, Forsyth County, 25 miles north of Atlanta. Bay Area checking in Catherine, Mumbai, India, Rotterdam. Listening to all this, David, what does this tell you about about the interest people have in this topic right now? People around the world are gathering to watch us talk about economic hardship, among other things.
This is the only topic right now. This is really the topic of our lifetimes. Certainly 9/11 was one of those moments. And for the time being, the one thing I would say is that in some ways, after 9/11, there was a slower shutdown. And this has been, in some ways, much more rapid. And so I think it becomes more naked and more apparent to everybody in a much quicker way that we're all interconnected. And I know that sounds like a kumbaya moment, but it's quite clearly that in our disconnection we are in fact so connected. Whether we're in a rural place and it's not deemed as much of a threat as a city, I don't know, but I think it's going to spread out. This is going to spread out to throughout the country. It's unquestionable.
We're dependent on each other. You know, like it's not just interconnected. We're dependent on workers. We're dependent on the unseen hands of the gig worker or the Lyft driver. And even if you're in a place that's not afflicted yet, you're going to be getting mail from someplace. You know, there are people coming off of planes from hubs, and everything is interconnected and dependent on each other. Mm-hmm. And what I'm hoping is that we'll finally start to question this sick individualism that has reigned more intensely than ever in the last few years in America, and we'll start to see ourselves as interdependent. So have a declaration of interdependence as we're sitting here in front of our screens.
Dory says something very nice. Dory, I'm inspired by everybody who watches. The only reason I'm doing this is people say they get a little bit of uplift from watching this, but I do it for my own uplift. I love my family, our foursome plus our dog, but they're the only people I've been interacting with apart from this 1 hour I get with all of you. So thank you. I plan to do this every single day as long as we're on lockdown. So I appreciate that. And to go to the point that we were just talking about, all kinds of folks are needed on hand to make this economy work, right? Safeway is frantically trying to hire temporary stock workers at my local store, but it's not just hazard pay, right? It's the equivalent of, in some ways, theoretically at least, cannon fodder. You're saying, who would work at this rate, take a job? We can't promise you'll be safe. And in no other circumstance,
I hope they're paying more than $7.25 an hour, which is right. the frozen and amber minimum wage.
And so
I feel like we should start to think of them as almost like an army of a kind, like the Amazon warehouse worker. Amazon hired 100,000 more employees. That it's an army, or it's hazard pay, first responders. Maybe they're getting. Maybe it's federalized. I started to have these fantasies of having, not in a company like Amazon, but some of these grocery stores federalized and understood as equivalent of EMTs.
Go ahead, Camille. You had a point.
Well, I was thinking along these lines. Also, one of the people that I'm writing about now is he's a bike delivery guy that Alyssa, you were speaking about too. He works for a few of the different delivery services. There's no health benefits. These guys are out there every day hustling and getting food to some people that are actually not well. So there is this element of reliance on these people. Why aren't we doing more to protect them from the very basic things in life that we need to survive?
Yeah, I'm just showing your story, Camille. I don't know if you can see it. This is in The Guardian. I'm praying we'll be back to work. What it's like to lose your job in a pandemic. And you wrote the story pretty fast, and with support from The Guardian, of course, and of course from the Economic Hardship Reporting Project, both Alyssa and David. And talk about the story and what it means to you that you were able to get this out there at this moment and so quickly.
Well, it was an incredible, again, very crowdsourced. I have a lot of resources and sources over the years as a journalist. I've done a lot of work for the New York Times and other publications, and I just activated my network and started looking for people, and people were coming out just so generously saying, I'm trying all of a sudden in 24 hours looking at a whole new reality. So we went quickly, thanks to David and Alyssa, and thanks to Jessica at The Guardian, and a wonderful photographer. I cannot say enough about him. A young man named Brian Anselm, and he went around very cautiously and carefully and photographed these people at a distance so that he made them feel safe. But I think, Rebecca, you had an experience with Brian coming over, and you met him out on the corner to get your portrait done.
And that's a great that's a great picture of Rebecca. Just bringing her on screen as we look at the story that we had before, and you can see it's a really nice picture of her right there. And Rebecca, thank you again for telling your story. I think you helped a lot of people. What do you think when you hear $17 an hour for a Safeway worker at this moment? Will people say, "Look, I'll take anything because I need the money," or it's so dangerous?
I mean, when people are desperate, they tend to go for whatever they can get. They are the frontline workers right now, and they deserve a living wage. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
They don't have health insurance, so
Yeah.
I think anything they can get.
Yeah, so let me also bring in our experts on all these issues here by asking you. Nadine Ornstein is watching. She is a curator at the Metropolitan Museum of Art and a wonderful former colleague of mine. And she runs the paintings and drawings department. I'm going to do an entire segment, one of these calls, maybe on Wednesday, about the museum sector. And Nadine, would love to have you join us. We're going to do an international conversation about arts and culture. And Nadine says, someone said to me that Pearl Vision laid off workers so they could claim unemployment insurance. So let's ask that technicality. Is there any advantage in being laid off like this so that you can claim benefits? And is that useful for people to know?
As far as I know, if you're furloughed, it's harder to apply for unemployment. If you're working limited hours, I went to a shop before they closed down, essential shops, a clothing store, to get a couple of shirts, and they said to me, "We're hoping to be shut down because we're now working on half hours, and we can't make it on half hours." They were hoping to actually get unemployment.
Wow. Okay. And Alicia Marie says, great photojournalism capturing the stories of the moment. And that's what Camille was talking about.
Yeah. I should say we should,
should,
if you like those, Alicia Marie, you should go to our site, economichardship.org, because we have a ton of really beautiful photography, and some are by actual photographers who are lower income, but many are, we give photographers money so that they can spend time, weeks, in Puerto Rico after the hurricane, and different times. So you should definitely check out our work. I want to say, if anyone is interested, and it's not the best time to start asking for money, but if anyone is interested, people should donate to EHRP at economichardship.org. You're not expected to by any means, but if you have any interest in donating something, you can give it to go to economichardship.org and look for the donation area.
And what you're doing is supporting journalism at a time when journalism and journalists need help, including we just saw one of the pictures from the famous Time magazine cover story about income inequality. Those were pictures that EHRP paid for, and that was what was so interesting. So please go to economichardship.org/donate. But take a look at the work here. This is so worthy at this moment. As a result of supporting EHRP, then they are able to support journalists all over the country doing important work, and not just writers, right? Let's talk about photographers, video, and even...
Oh, the hand washing, show that.
Yeah, let's show the hand washing. Yeah, let's show them this. So this is an example of what you supported. I'm just going to click through here. So it's showing you...
this is by Ellen Fournay.
And look at this, spiders on feedback. I needed a name for that because I've been doing that. Spiders kissing, kung fu grip, motorcycle throttle, mortar pestle, then use a single wash towel. Look at this. So this is so interesting. So you're trying to find ways to engage people without it only being writing, which long form writing is so important, but that's not the only way you can tell these stories, right, Alyssa?
Well, cartoons are very powerful, and
Yep.
Ellen did a great job, and that ran in the Washington Post with our support.
Great.
Sometimes pictures really are worth 1,000 words, and especially if you have an image like that. Every time I wash my hands, I'm thinking mortar and pestle. So I'm hoping that will catch on.
Like this,
as a mnemonic. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm doing the spiders kissing, I guess, is what I'm.
G.I. Joe also, somebody born in the 70s. I'm like, anyway, yeah.
So let's read some of the comments, and then we're gonna get you all back to work, because you have things to do. Either you're working from home or you're helping people. You're doing a project like Rebecca is. It's really great that we can all be together for just an hour and learn together. I do this every day, so please join. Tomorrow we're going to go live to Italy and talk to journalists in different parts of Italy. The horror story that's there. Italy not only has the curve not flattened, it keeps increasing, and it's ahead of China, as you know, and more people have died in Italy than have died in China. And you know that Italy's population is a tiny fraction of China, so that lays out why we need to go to Italy tomorrow and talk to them. So that will be at noon Eastern time tomorrow. Please join us on all my platforms. Otherwise, you can always find it all archived on the platforms or at YouTube. My YouTube channel is SreeNet. I hope you will subscribe. So let's go through some quick questions here or comments. Jacqueline says it's scary for a lot of people, and there's no attempt to address the economic inequalities in any of the solutions discussed by politicians. Alicia Marie says, what are the job search tips, ideas for anyone who has been looking for work before any of this? So let me see if our panelists have any quick thoughts on that. Otherwise, we'll just keep going. And I'm going to do a full session on job hunting with job hunting experts, including someone from LinkedIn who can help. And we also want to talk to people who are off of LinkedIn and those kinds of jobs who need help and advice. So please stay tuned and send me any ideas you have. I'm Sree@Sree.net. I'm always happy to hear from you and take your suggestions and learn from everybody watching. That's why I'm doing these sessions. You can see my information at the bottom. So anyone have a thought on Alicia Marie's question?
No.
Okay, wait.
I have a quick thought that one thing I've been seeing on Instagram is a lot of hashtags, and I would just follow them, looking for workers, different hashtags that might have something to do with job finding. I would also probably look at the Zoom website and see if they're hiring, because all of these online platforms are just exploding in terms of how much they're doing. So that would be one thing I would do.
Thank you. And Jacqueline says, I feel like there's not enough discussion about gig workers and consultants. And this is exactly what Alyssa wrote a wonderful story about, sad but wonderful story about the issues. Even when you're ordering your food, that's one of the things that people are relying on, right? We don't want to go out, we're going to order the food, but the poor guy or gal who's coming and bringing you the food, what is happening to them? So please read that story. If you have a minute, Alyssa, you can go into Facebook, my Facebook group, and just or my Facebook, and just write down some of these ideas or some of the links if you'd like to do that. You can share them. London says, do you think the pandemic can force the system to change it? Final thought before we wrap up. Doug says, Italy situation makes me want to cry. Mary says, hand washing, tops and bottoms, in betweens. I sing it to my kids, to three blind mice. We have to do everything we can. Steve is saying mortar and pestle. And so here's what we're going to do. We're going to ask each of you about this question about gig workers, consultants, self-employed workers, and this question of, will the system change? Can the system change? And then we'll say goodbye if that's okay. Rebecca, may I start with you? And just your thought on those questions of how do you feel about some of these issues? And do you think a change can come through everything that we're going through?
God, I hope so. I hope this brings about change. Hopefully people that have had their eyes closed to the situations of a lot of workers in this country will, through this experience, start to see how some other people are living and the issues that we're coming up against. I hope. What was the other question?
No, I mean, do you have thought? I mean, you're worried about your own colleagues so much, of course. Do you have a thought on how you're going to share these resources? Do you have WhatsApp groups, or what are you doing?
I've been sharing them all as I find about things in my Instagram stories, which might now have expired. But I will forward you all the list.
Oh, thank you.
That if you can share those.
I will.
A lot of the applications are also in Spanish. A lot of restaurant workers speak Spanish. A lot of others speak Bangladeshi. But
yeah, and so that's great. And you can find her at Rebecca Leigh SIL, LEIGHSIL on Instagram. That's her jam, right? And I love the Merce Cunningham poster behind you.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's great. Rebecca, we're going to let you go so you don't have to hang out with us anymore. Thank you so much.
Lovely to see you.
I want Camille to say goodbye. I want to say Camille also to say goodbye.
Bye, Camille.
Okay.
Okay. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sree.
Oh, Camille,
Bye.
stay for a second. Camille,
Yes.
stay for
Oh,
a second.
sorry.
Yeah, we're just saying
Yes.
goodbye to Rebecca. And Camille, we'll let you say goodbye to everybody. She's _Camille Sweeney on Twitter. And you got to go find her archive of stories because she's obviously a wonderful reporter and writer. Thoughts on those questions about self-employed, consultants, gig workers, and do you think the system can change?
I actually do think this is just the beginning. When something this major has such an effect on so many people, I do think that it's going to change. A lot of millennials now are very interested in unionizing, and I'm wondering what could come of that. I think we're going to see a different workforce over the next decade based on this. We're going to acknowledge, as I think it was Alyssa was saying, just how vulnerable so many workers are that we just take for granted. And at the gig economy level, we're just not going to be able to sustain our lives this way. So I do think we are going to be seeing changes. And some of the reporting I'm doing is also on Instagram. It's at Find Your Road. If you want to look there, my next area that I'm tackling is education and teachers and how remote learning is going to be affecting them.
Yeah,
So,
I just want to say about remote learning. It was almost as if the country had two days to learn how to remote teach and remote learn. All these kids, they had no experience with remote learning, remote studying, and suddenly we're forced into this. So that's so interesting. Folks, and
it brings up a question of who has broadband and who's going to be able to, and one teacher sort of good-naturedly said, no more snow days.
Right.
So,
right.
Every day's a snow day now. Yeah.
Every day's a snow day. Folks, I want to thank Camille Sweeney for joining us. And we weren't able to make the tech work for her, but we sort of made it work. And this is the kind of hustle factor that we all have now. Thank you so much, Camille. She's _Camille Sweeney. Please follow her and be in touch with her and all the great work she's doing. And I'm just going to turn off the phone, Camille, so we can say goodbye. Okay.
Thanks. Bye, everyone. Thank you, Sree.
Bye, Camille. And I think somebody also noticed that my battery was sort of running out also.
It was awesome. Conceptual art, Sree.
Right. We're also left with our two of our speakers. I just want each of them to have a chance to share their thoughts after doing this. I know we've not done this before together, but I hope you can see that this is a great way for all of us to connect. And also, I'd love to see EHRP holding its own versions of these with journalists, like a town hall, so that people can take questions. My audience is not just journalists, but so many of the journalists benefited enormously. So we're so grateful to both of you for coming on and participating.
Thank you.
Alyssa, let's have you go first. Gig workers, consultants, self-employed, what can we do for them? And is change a coming?
Well, for gig workers, at the very least, we need to provide alcohol wipes, sanitizing products, masks, gloves, the basics. The people I've spoken to are operating without those things, which is kind of shocking because of the level of exposure. When they go to people's houses, this was a week ago when I was reporting this, the Instacart delivery worker that I spoke to, so everyone was signing her cell phone. So the level of contact with strangers a day, and then she had no alcohol wipes. She couldn't buy them; they're sold out everywhere, and the company was not supplying her with them. They're also they weren't wiping down the supermarkets. So it's just a kind of level of just basic physical negligence. We need sick leave that's longer than 2 weeks, and you don't have to have coronavirus evidence because we know how hard it is to get tested. So one of the kind of questions I have with Uber and Lyft having these 14-day, they just introduced 14-day sick leave if you're positive for the virus. How are people besides Rand Paul going to get that test, right, in a speedy way without already being wildly ill and potentially contagious? So I think you have to have a lower bar of in which these companies offer sick leave. You have to just feel under the weather in X or Y way, and that's it. No questions asked. These are companies with billion-dollar valuations. They can pay for it.
And some of them are not paying taxes and all kinds of issues. I'll just point out that what I learned yesterday, I mean, I see some of these things but you haven't focused on. America is the only OECD country, the only advanced country in the world that doesn't have paid sick leave for all its workers, that doesn't have, every woman cannot get guaranteed maternity leave, all these things that are so basic in other countries.
National shames.
I'm sorry?
These are national shames. We should be ashamed of ourselves as a culture, as a society, and as a government, that we are not doing the basic things that government should do for people. We can argue all we want about, whether the Commerce Department should do what it does. But can we really argue that when someone gets sick, that we should take care of them? Yeah. Is that really an argument in our culture?
Yeah, something like 86% of families don't have paid family leave. When you start listening to the numbers, I think the sick leave and paid family leave were with Papua New Guinea and places that are not developed democracies. So I think we really have to start reassessing. Well, will that happen or not? We're such a divided country. We're so politically twisted at this moment. I don't know. Obviously, I love to think that this is going to be a moment for wild progressive action. It appears that there's certain things, from HUD forgiving evictions to mortgage payments you can defer mortgage payments, to money being deposited in people's accounts who are struggling. There's a whole range of stuff that is potentially could be positive. Medicare for all gaining traction. But I'm also thinking a lot about the millennials and the Gen Z folks who are even worse. I mean, they're born into 9/11, coming of age in the Great Recession, and now this. Anybody from our generation, Sree, I'm a wee bit younger, that it's
a lot younger.
But yeah, a wee bit younger. But we didn't know that level of suffering until 9/11, really. Yeah. I mean, yes, we graduated to a recession in the 90s. It wasn't like 2008. So I can't see these people voting the same way. I mean, how could they? They've seen nothing but utter limited resources and tragedy.
Right. But I'll tell you that one of the things we learned from everything, all the books that have been written from Nickel and Dime to What's the Matter with Kansas, through your book and Stephen Greenhouse's book and, Nick Kristoff's book, all of these books, is that people don't always vote the way they should for their own benefit. And politicians, they can be led astray by politicians and these ideas that the cultural issues are more important than their own their own health care, their own health and well-being. And this, we tolerate this as a nation, is outrageous. Jacqueline says the number of economic vulnerabilities revealed by the situation is incredible. Doug says the disparity between employed versus gig workers is even more dramatic in this disruption. Almost no chance for unemployment benefits or to take advantage of deferral programs from lenders or others. Jacqueline says, great topic. And we are just glad to do this. It means a lot for me that I can do this and have this conversation, but I'm learning so much from this. And Alicia Marie is worried about the temporary workers who are census enumerators, right?
Yeah.
They're going to go counting door to door. What is going to happen? No communication yet. And just, each of these headlines would be a story for a week, but we don't hear them because there's too much going on. I just heard today that on Friday, the Peace Corps just brought everybody home, all the volunteers all over the world, and they don't and they fired them basically, and they don't qualify for unemployment benefits because they were categorized as somebody who was not quite employed, even though they were giving 2 years of their lives in any, pick any country in the world where they were working. They're all brought home immediately and let go. And that was not even clear in the announcements that they made that everyone was let go. So imagine that, like that would be an outrage, but we have no time for outrage because the next horrifying thing is coming.
Time for outrage.
Yeah, it's really, Jacqueline says they are a national shame. It's inhumane and cruel how people are treated in this country based on economic status. And I can tell you, Jacqueline is someone I've known for 20 years. She's worked in the nonprofit sector, helping people. As a Gen Xer, I feel we've had a hard time too.
Well, that's true.
Through multiple economic downturns where we are wiped out and have to start again. And it seems almost quaint to think about how the famous expression, "It's the economy, stupid," turned an election. And at that time, the disparity wasn't like this. The CEO paychecks weren't as outrageous as they are now. The number of billionaires in America, I guarantee you, if we go back and look how many there were in 1992 versus there are now, is order of magnitude different.
A few less probably than last week.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
I thought you were going to say, when you said it's economy stupid, I thought you were going to say reality bites. I'll be like, I'll sign on to that one as well. Yeah. Yeah.
And so here it is. Doug is saying that census jobs have been delayed, but the Bureau has not told anybody, right? And we're having this, as I said, cross-country global conversation. Alicia Marie is in Michigan and Doug is in San Francisco. We're in New York, and we want to keep having these conversations. I want to let David have his final thoughts, and then I'll start to wrap up.
My big final thought is something that the government can do tomorrow, which is free hand sanitizer. Produce it. Use the government to get manufacturers to be producing it nationally. We can't rely on Purell and the price gougers at Amazon to produce what we need on a fundamental basis, which is hand sanitizer for everyone. That would be my one big idea for today: free hand sanitizer.
And I know there are some efforts, including some of those alcohol companies that Rebecca had mentioned earlier.
Also, high fashion
are trying to redo their factories so they can make. They already have the alcohol, and maybe they can inject it into some of this. So we're going to say, I'm going to take, say goodbye to both of you. Please check out EHRP, the Economic Hardship.
EconomicHardship.org.
Yeah, economichardship.org. Just go to that, and you'll see not just very important stories about what's happening in America today, but also how journalists can get grants to do reporting about those projects, and how you watching today can support these projects. If you like what I'm doing, you don't have to give me money, but give money to economichardship.org so that they can support all these great people. Anyone watching, we want your ideas. Talk to us. Yeah. You have my email. You have David at David R. Wallace. You have at Lisquart, and you have at Econ Hardship. Please connect with us. Please follow them so that you can learn more from them and hear from them. And Alicia says, you guys are awesome. Thank you for being here, and thanks for sharing. And Jonathan says, great show and always informative. Tomorrow, tomorrow noon Eastern, I'm going to talk to my friends in Italy, and they're going to tell us what's happening there. But you can see it's a conversation across many borders when we're having it. I'm going to actually say goodbye to these two folks.
Goodbye.
I'm going to wrap up, and then I'm going to come back in to our offstage green room. If you guys have a minute, I just want to talk to both of you, but let me just say goodbye to everybody right now. And I'm going to say goodbye to you folks. Thank you. Thank you, David. And thank you, Alyssa. And thank you all for watching. This has been a very meaningful hour for me. I hope it has been for some of you. I hope it has been helpful to you. If you aren't connected to me on Twitter, Instagram, I'm Sree at Twitter, at SreeNet on Instagram, and I'm on YouTube as SreeNet. I'd love more subscribers. We can keep doing these. And please follow me on Facebook as well. I also have a Facebook advanced social media group where we talk about a lot of tech issues and tips, and you can find that very easily by going on Facebook and searching Sree's Advanced Social. Sree's Advanced Social, you'll find it. I'm Sree Sreenivasan, Sree@Sree.net. Thank you so much for your time and attention. So grateful. Tag your friends. They can watch the recording right away, and you can join us on Tuesday at noon Eastern when we'll all go to Italy. And Valeria has an Italian sentence there. I'm not sure what it says. And Steve says, thank you, Sree, and all your wonderful guests. And Steve is an example of the wonderful team I have that helps us produce these. If you have a conference, a conversation, something that you want to move online, hire us, and we will help you with our consulting and our doing to produce a conference like we did this weekend for 200-300 people, all online, and we did all the work. You have great content. We can help you. Thank you very much, and goodbye, everybody. And we are ending the broadcast.